Hello, everyone, and I would like to both greet everybody here and announce that Ishmael Interactive has made a great debut at the X4 Qualtrics conference by our board member, Anna Monroe. I think board member is the right term we'll use.
That
These
works.
things change all the time.
Yeah.
Um, People behind the curtain. We'll go with that. Anna, we got a chance to make our first splash, which is always very exciting. But what is X4 and why were we there?
So X4 is a massive conference put on every year by various sponsors, but really, really heavily sponsored by Qualtrics, which is a survey platform that you might have heard of. It's used throughout the federal government, in many, many very large multinationals, all the way down to like kind of new startup, like less than 10 employees. Qualtrics is actually a really impressive tool. I am a big like skeptic of all software. I think that most software doesn't need to ship, but Qualtrics just really got some thoughtful features. It's also like an incredible, vast world. So we were there because I was asked to come teach human-centered design in a little workshop for their government track. So they have a government track. They have kind of, I guess, like multinationals. They have like a smaller business one, various tracks. It was packed. And I was asked to come teach impact measures, which you can find in the human-centered design guide measurement sections on ishmaalinteractive.com. I was asked to come teach this in the government track. So this was a few months ago. So I did kind of go through the required approvals and everything like that. So I'm happy to say those all came together, miracle. And I was able to go. So that was kind of my role. I just was asked to come teach. I landed there and went into my class to teach on impact measures.
So Qualtrics has always impressed me by how ahead of the ball they are market wise. They skate to where the puck's going, not where it is. They start their AI plugins 2 years before I even heard of OpenAI. They're good at predicting these forces. Overall, market wise, when it comes to user feedback and customer feedback, what do you think drew them to? We need a human centered design person.
Yeah, I talked about that a lot with my hostess. I think that in this day and age, the problem with impact measures used to be how to get enough data to actually build a responsible index. So, how do you get enough data to measure happiness? How do you get enough data to measure self reliance, which is a composite indicator put out by USAID? Well, now we don't have that problem anymore. We have the problem of far too much data, right? We have just like a tsunami of data. We're all drowning in it. And my counter to that is human centered design. Because what I see happening is we have more and more data and less prioritization. And if we have to depend on our AI tooling or other automatic workflows to tell us what data is important, well, then we're just accruing tech debt, right? We really need to build our data profiles at a human level because that's the only way we can truly understand what's important and really be able to iterate in a way our customers want us to, that will give them delight, give them through paths to accomplishing the goals they want. And I kind of always put it like this. You know how when you walk into a massive, truly massive apartment building or a huge corporate center and you kind of hate it, it feels odd. And that's because architecture is, in that case, is larger than human scale. People like a human scale of architecture, 4 to 6 stories high, no more than 5 to 6 apartments on one corridor. And this is like not my opinion. This has been proven in massive civic architectural bodies like Singapore, for example, did this really well. They have huge, tall buildings, but every pod in each building is only about 5 or 6 apartments. People build community. So I'm actually advocating for the building of community in our data sets through human-centered design. So I think that's what drew them to me. I assume that's what happened.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I had the opportunity to sort of follow you along through social media and some of your journey through X4. And it's interesting that you bring up this tech debt concept because I know one of the key speakers was Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
For those people who aren't familiar with Rick Rubin, uh, your favorite musician, no matter who he is, has worked with this man who knows how to play no instruments and to my knowledge has no formal musical training, but I guess he's coming in with a lack of technical debt. sort of
Absolutely.
in the same way that you just brought that up. So, this keynote speaker, there's always that tie of, okay, they're here for this reason. The keynote, they really try to make sure the keynote captures the spirit of the gathering.
Right.
What did you get from listening to Rick Rubin?
Honestly, it was amazing. I actually like really admire Rick Rubin, and I'm not much of like a fan person. I'm not like a fangirl. I'm kind of a born skeptic, but I have admired Rick Rubin for many many years. Growing up hearing the Beastie Boys, um, and other groups, I was just like, wow, like how did these things get made? And you kind of don't have to track back far before you hit on Rick Rubin. And in X4, he was really the counterpoint to a lot of the other speakers because he did advocate for this human centeredness. He didn't call it that. But all the other speakers were really about like features. They were all about volume. They were about the next technology. And Rick Rubin was like, everybody's inherently creative. And our job is to sort of move with intention through that creativity. And I was like, yeah, Rick Rubin, that is our job. And to me, that is the future if you really don't want to get lost in all your data. And you shouldn't want to because you want to be able to understand your data and your customers.
Yeah, I have a cousin who's in the music business for the past 30 years, and he always tells me that every producer is either a soundboard genius or Rick Rubin. It sort of
Yeah.
follows into those two camps.
Yeah.
Um, Now, in that same sense, interesting people speaking at keynotes and conferences, they tend to be there because interesting people flock to other people who are fun to listen to. What were some of the other conversations you got to have? What was that experience like just walking around and finding people to chat with?
Honestly, the walking around and finding people to chat with was the best part of the conference. I attended some really great talks. There was one talk from the CIO of California, Liana Bailey Crimmins is her name. There was a great talk from the HR people at Stripe. Actually, they did some really cool stuff at Stripe using Qualtrics, like to share customer data actually internally, so they could kind of harvest what people outside of the managerial group are seeing and feeling and hearing. Those were great. But the best ones were the informal sort of elevator pitches. I was actually staying on the 19th floor, which I found was the perfect amount of time to have a chat. And I mean, you and I know each other quite well. I will talk to anybody. I will DM anybody. It doesn't matter because all they can do is like ignore you or think you're weird, and that's fine, right? Like whatever. We're all at a conference together. So I think that the best conversations I had was where I was just like, "Hey, are you here for the conference?" And we just got to share a little bit of what we do. Because Ishmael Interactive is such a new organization, I kind of did sort of play with the wording, and I was really gratified to find that by the end of the conference, the wording that we have always talked about our work in enterprise digital experience and human centered design landed the best. Like we really are at Ishmael Interactive offering this three-dimensional view of people's digital ecosystem. We know how to count it. We know how to prioritize it. We know how to make it human centered. And then we can also teach you human centered design. And I thought that was very cool in terms of the conversations I got to have. On the other side, the work that other people are doing, again, I think that work at Stripe was so, it was so inspiring to see a kind of medium-sized tech company, I guess, say, hey, we shouldn't keep all of our customer data towards the managerial group. We also need to inform even the front level workers. And that reminded me of a lot of the work that we did in VA, where VA has this great understanding that frontline workers know everything, right? Like they know everything. You need to ask them, you need to hear them. And I thought that was so smart of Stripe. And I did like go up to the speakers and, share that with them at the end. And then, of course, it was thrilling for me as a Californian to meet Liana Bailey Crimmins, just because she was so instrumental in setting up the community resource centers after the LA fires. I actually think they're doing an amazing job, and talking about the build of rural infrastructure, which had a huge impact on me as a child growing up in Georgia. Without the rural infrastructure in Georgia, I don't think that our farm would have internet even now. It's like very far from things. So it was
Yeah.
just it was really inspiring talks in that way.
So let's move a little bit to sort of the art of the elevator pitch.
Okay.
And just like you're talking about making data humanistic, I find the elevator pitch can sort of work the same way because you're always tempted to just talk at people, throw the data at them.
Yes, I ran into that. I did that myself, unfortunately, in one conversation that I regret.
But you're learning here, you're iterating, and you just gave me a few tidbits about people you got back from the elevator. Could you give any advice to people in their elevator pitch about not just giving the pitch, but also receiving an interaction?
Yeah, wow, okay, those are two big questions, but I'm going to try to figure them out.
We like big questions.
I actually I actually did follow the classic elevator pitch script of like, problem you have. Well, we do solution for it. In fact, like data to back that up, like one data point. So I was taught, I'm from the American South. We have a chat. We have a chat. Like we're definitely talking if we meet on the street, in the corner, we're waiting at the hostess stand, whatever it is. So starting the conversation, it feels very natural to me. So when I enter the elevator, I would kind of look around. And people are wearing their badges. It's quite easy. But even if they're not, I'll just be like, hey, are you here for the conference? I mean, this whole hotel was just like here for the conference. It was a safe bet. So I would say, you're here for the conference. And that was always my entry. And then I practiced that like 3-sentence pitch beforehand because I knew that I had an elevator ride to get into it. And it does, in fact, work like a charm. So I'm definitely a big, like, as nerdy as that sounds, like follow the script. It really works. I've tested it for you. Like, you're welcome. And then, you wait for them to come back at you and then the elevator ride's over. So you actually don't have time to ramble unless you're like incredibly nervous, which you may or may not be. That really works for me because I often have trouble like closing out conversations. I just like want to keep going and keep going and keep going. And so having that like hallway walk, elevator ride kind of level really, really works for me if I start from that script.
The classics work for a reason.
Yeah, totally.
So what can we look forward to or see Ishmael Interactive at in the near future?
Oh my gosh, so many things. So in the very near future, we just got our website up, which is great. So we're actually I think our first offering is going to be human-centered design training. So we are so lucky to have someone on our team who actually has a PhD in curriculum design, which was a fun fact that none of us learned until a few weeks ago. I've been working with this person for a year. I didn't know that.
You never know.
Never know. She's just like, she's full of like hidden facets, So we are actually standing up a human-centered design training series. You can acquire up to a teacher certificate for this. She and I are designing that. I, of course, have been teaching human-centered design for many years. I have a terminal degree in design. I have a STEM degree from Arts Center College of Design out here in California. So that's going to be our first offering, and that's going to be coming up in the next few weeks. Just like 1-hour trainings if you want them, all the way up to like 200-hour teacher certificates. So look out for that. The other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be offering enterprise digital experience to companies that are interested in that. I think that it's really hard for groups to admit that maybe they're a little lost in the sauce, right? It's a little bit like, oh no, I now need to get somebody to tell me about my enterprise digital experience. And I want to help people kind of throw that feeling of inadequacy out the window. Because if you're busy doing your thing, if you're busy like getting your product out there, if you're busy making your customers happy, and your DX sort of like starts being a little wonky, that's, I would argue in many ways, like a signal of success. And like, we're basically the cleaning crew. Like we're just going to come in and like do a bit of tidying. It doesn't mean we have to destroy your house. And we're just going to set things to right. So those are the two things that we're really launching in Ishmael Interactive. The trainings probably will come first, and then we're working towards that enterprise digital experience with other groups. It's kind of a bigger offer, so I think it'll be a longer on-ramp.
Thank you, everyone. So from us at Ishmael Interactive, never forget, the post has changed, but the mission continues.